Good evening and welcome to today's Tropics for July 22nd, 2020. Please note I'm not a meteorologist and this video is just a collection of my thoughts and opinions about the storms I'm talking about. And for any decision making, please consult the National Hurricane Center or your local officials. So today I'm looking at Invest 91L here, which is currently generally in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico, and Tropical Storm Gonzalo, which is right now in the central Atlantic, but is approaching the Caribbean and will get there in towards the late week into the weekend. So first off, let's look at Invest 91L. You can see it's organized some, and it does have a closed circulation now. You can see that there's some westerlies under this convection here, and there's also some easterlies, obviously, as there are trade winds that are steering the storm. So there is a closed circulation, and it looks relatively circular, except we can't quite tell that it's a concentrated circulation that you'd see in an actual developed tropical cyclone. So far it's organizing, it's getting close, but it's not quite there. Right now there's some convection, but a lot of it's pretty much died off. There is a little bit of new convection here, so we'll see what it does, and maybe it'll try to concentrate that vortex into something you'd see with an actual bona fide tropical cyclone. Right now there's recon in the storm, but it seems that they aren't quite finding that concentrated type of vortex you'd see with the strong tropical or an actual tropical cyclone. So it looks like it isn't quite one, but it might become a potential tropical cyclone at some point, so that the National Hurricane Center can issue watches and warnings for this storm. Looking at infrared imagery, you can see that a lot of this convection has died off here, and it's now pretty shallow. It's mostly cirrus now. But there is a small little blob of new convection here. It's modestly cold. It's approaching negative 70 degrees Celsius. And again, we'll just have to watch what this does and see if the diurnal maximum can help out 91L a bit into forming into an actual tropical cyclone. Conditions aren't really all that unfavorable for 91L, so it looks like it'll be able to slowly intensify and organize as it heads west-northwest towards Texas. And actually the GFS here doesn't really do much with it, but I'm not so sure about that because the conditions don't look totally unfavorable, and there isn't too much organization 91L has to do at this point to actually become a tropical cyclone. I think maybe a tropical storm at this point, but again, the main impacts should be rain. It doesn't look like an especially strong system will be making landfall, but it does look like it might slow down near the coast. And if you have a slow-moving system, you might have some rain being brought in. So I think the main issue will be some rain and flooding from 91L. But there might be some gusty winds, especially if this is stronger than some of the global models show, which a lot of them seem to be weak, and a lot of global models have been playing catch up with some of these storms, like this one and Gonzalo. But we shall see what ends up happening. So looking at Tropical Storm Gonzalo, it's been able to organize some more over the past day. There's some pretty impressive banding this morning, but that pretty much collapses. Some dry air got into that banding, and now it's mostly consisting of this CDO region, and it's been firing deep convection, especially lately. So that means it's probably trying to organize, and actually recent microwave pass has shown that there seems to be a bit of a low-level eye, not much above that, but it shows that there is there's organization going on, and Gonzalo's trying to intensify into a stronger tropical cyclone. However, the conditions are starting to change. It looks like Gonzalo will continue to intensify, but you're seeing one thing to notice is the easterly shear is pretty much gone. Gonzalo is starting to accelerate a bit and is getting outside of that tropical easterly jet region. And in fact, there's a bit of undercutting westerly shear. If you look at some of these thunderstorms rotating into the convection here, or into the CDO here, See, one of them is getting sheared from the west, and that goes into this circulation, and that caused a bit of disruption earlier today. And that means it's Gonzalo's had some struggles actually getting the convection to rotate to the west, so that'd be up shear rotation, and that's not really saying that it's a weak storm. You tend to need slightly stronger storms than Gonzalo is to actually start rotating convection up shear. And if we do see that, it would be an indication that Gonzalo has intensified, but we haven't quite seen that yet. But it's definitely good to look at, and see as an indicator of intensification. Looking at infrared imagery, you can see the convection is pretty deep. You had some old pinpricks of negative 80 degrees Celsius convection, but it's warmed a bit. But there has been consistent deep convection over the center of Gonzalo, and that's allowed for some sort of a weaker inner core to form. And if this continues, you'll likely see some intensification and maybe an actual a more robust inner core, and which could possibly bring it to hurricane status, which is now forecast to do by the National Hurricane Center. The steering looks isn't really too complex. It might be move a bit north and south depending on the strength, but it does look like it'll head west northwest into the Caribbean. And then we'll have to see if it interacts with any of the Greater Antilles Islands. The real issue now is trying to figure out strength. Right now, there's pretty much a model war right now with the generally weaker global models such as the ECMWF or the GFS, which are keeping it rather weak, but actually the GFS has been trending stronger and slower with Gonzalo, so it does seem that the global models, which have been playing catch up lately, it seems, with Gonzalo, are continuing to do so and trend stronger. So these models tend to keep Gonzalo weaker and have shear closer to the Eastern Caribbean area, and also move Gonzalo faster. So these models are weaker, but at the same time, we have models such as the HWRF, which makes it much stronger and actually keeps its strength into the Central Caribbean, which means it might actually be able to get through the entire Caribbean pretty much unscathed, which isn't too common in July. And as you can see, the GFS is trending to the HWRF, which is slower, stronger, and has the shear further to the west. And the speed is quite important because that will make sure that will basically show us how if the drier air will stay further ahead of Gonzalo, such as what the HWRF does here. It's a bit slower, it's stronger, than the GFS, and this drier air is both less intense, and it's also not as far south or west, and that means there isn't as much drier air that can start interrupting Gonzalo into the Caribbean, along with a lesser shear. That's if we have a slower storm that lets the drier go to the west faster than Gonzalo, or you have the GFS here, which is a bit faster than Gonzalo still, despite the trends, and allows some of that drier air to start getting closer to Gonzalo and possibly wrap it into the circulation, which, along with shear, would start weakening this storm and possibly cause it to dissipate. Since the global models have Gonzalo moving both faster and being weaker, that means it has less of an upper level anticyclone that can knock stuff like the upper level westerlies here in the Caribbean to the west. So that allows this high shear to nudge further east. You see, it's south of Hispaniola here, and or especially Haiti, and that means Gonzalo will run into that high shear quickly, and with the slightly drier air and shear, along with the trade wind divergence and higher speed, means that the conditions are pretty much very hostile for Gonzalo, and that would cause it to dissipate. But for example, the H wharf is much stronger with it, and it's also slower with Gonzalo. So that means you have this stronger upper level anticyclone that is able to push this upper troughing and higher shear a bit to the west. You see that there isn't a peak south of Hispaniola here. Instead of it's a much further west in the Western Caribbean. So this would allow for Gonzalo to be a bit stronger and maintain its strength into the Caribbean. And so far the models are trending towards this, but this does seem to be the higher end solution for the moment. We'll have to watch short-term trends, like if Gonzalo starts strengthening more, and also verify its track against these two models to see which one is more correct. So far, the HWRF has been slightly more accurate with Gonzalo, so it might be more correct further downstream. But we'll have to see. Right now, here's the official track from the National Hurricane Center. It does take it to hurricane strength now, but it does start weakening it as it gets into the Caribbean, since conditions still aren't going to be great for it. Even the HWRF weakens it some in the Caribbean. And what the National Hurricane Center is doing right now is basically splitting them. So it's going between the two models. So we'll have to see which one is more correct, or if the National Hurricane Center is correct here in splitting the difference. But given how the global models have not done well with Gonzalo so far, and how the HWRF seems to be verifying better, at least at this point, I think it might be a little stronger than what the National Hurricane Center is saying. But right now, this is their forecast, and it looks like we'll have a weakening strong tropical storm heading into the Windward Islands. So if you have interests, or are on vacation, or you live in the Windward Islands or Barbados or Trinidad and Tobago, you might just want to keep an eye on Tropical Storm Gonzalo, because you will likely see impacts of that in the form of strong winds, especially if the center passes over you. And also heavy rain, as you usually see with tropical cyclones. However, the relatively fast speed means rain won't be a huge issue for you if you do have interests in this region. Further downstream, it's harder to say what goes on downstream. That's too much further out, and there are larger track errors here. So that means not to see once Gonzalo gets into the Caribbean what it does, and and impacts further downstream than the islands here. You might have to wait a bit until we get a better idea of what is going on. Otherwise, there isn't too much going on in the tropics and the Atlantic. There is some tropical cyclone activity in the eastern Pacific with Hurricane Douglas, but otherwise the global tropics are quiet. Outside of that, like the western Pacific, it's just very quiet still. But that is pretty much all I'm talking about today. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know, and thanks for watching.